All right, everyone. It is great to see such a large group with us today, and I'm not surprised because it's a topic that I know I get asked about all the time. I'm super passionate about it, having spent quite a few years specifically in the space of corporate nonprofit partnerships. I see in our audience, I see Sharon Alexander. I think I see Kate Watt, Karen Granger. So many of my favorite Florida-based community leaders, and I think we have community leaders outside of the state as well. But many good friends here, and we're super excited to have you here. This is going to be a candid discussion, and I know we all like candor because you don't get a whole lot of it out there sometimes in this overly polished and kind of carefully messaged world. But we want to make sure you get a lot of actionable insights, and so that's what we're aiming for here. And I think most importantly, let me advance this slide. A second. Here we go. Um, we want to make sure that you're sending in questions. We're gonna dedicate the last 10 minutes of our webinar today specifically to questions. But Amy Armstrong, who is our chief of staff, is monitoring the chat as we speak. And if there are questions that come up that are on your mind, send them in right away. She's going to be monitoring them. If it's a good time for us to sort of pause and address your question, especially if it's pertinent to kind of where we are in the discussion, let's do that. And so please don't be shy. And but we will safeguard the kind of closing portion of this time at the end. So real quick before we dive in, mission impact strategies. For the last year since our launch, we've been helping nonprofit organizations, companies, and actual local governments take their mission to the next level. We really are full service, everything from philanthropy expertise to external communications and branding, coalition building and public affairs, and personal leadership coaching. And we're deeply passionate about what we do. We've got some amazing, I think, clients that may be on today. So thank you so much for bringing us into your mission. We love to help organizations take their game to the next level. So if you're in a spot leading or supporting an organization and you are ready to kind of move to a new season of your mission to expand what you do and need some help and advisory along the way to ensure that you really maximize your organization's mission, we'd love to talk. And so Mission Impact Strategies is myself and a group of amazing Florida-based leaders. Amy Armstrong, who's our fearless chief of staff, Andre Bailey, who many of you know, based in Central Florida, has kind of been at the forefront of Florida social issues for decades now, as well as Clayton Lewis Ferreira, who's and Tamara Demko, who again are 20, we're all about 25 years in to our leadership journeys in the nonprofit, public, and corporate spaces. We are quite a diverse group ourselves, and that's what makes, I think, our work very rich. And if you watch us all online, you know we have a great time doing what we do. But so let's dive right in and kind of frame the discussion. So powerful corporate partnerships, if you're on this, you've either been in them, you've been seeking them, or you've been chasing them. And I personally, having spent about 20 years in this space for a number of great organizations, and have been had the privilege to sort of to be partnered with in incredible ways that really did transform the corporate organization that I led, and have always been sort of a student of, why did that work so well? And why in, say, a difficult economic time when we're asked to reduce our philanthropic budget, why are we absolutely protecting certain relationships and when other relationships might have to be sunset? Why is that? And none of that is by chance. A lot of that stuff is a big collection of intangible, I say, habits, traits, and actions that, when sort of woven all together, bring about next level relationship building and next level partnerships. There's a lot of typical out there, and while that's okay in an environment maybe that's not competitive or when economic times are great, um, this conversation is when you're in a competitive environment, when you are competing for limited dollars, organizations that can manage only limited partners, and an economic environment may be uncertain. When that is the truth, everything becomes tighter. And so, in those situations, which is most of the time, you want to go from typical to being transformational. So, I have, you know, when I look at the thousands of actions and habits that I've sort of experienced, witnessed, and studied that have brought about great relationship building, I've kind of taken my 20 years of observations through, the five organizations that you see here that I've led or helped lead philanthropically and identified five pillars. Now, you could probably come up with six or seven or eight, but for the purposes of the way that I think, I like to bucket them into five areas. And these pillars would be all things supporting the business, how a nonprofit doesn't have to support a business to get their partnership, right? But we're talking about in a competitive environment when all things are equal and a nonprofit or a for-profit has to make a decision, say, they want to make an impact in housing and homelessness, and there's five great options, and they only have the bandwidth and wherewithal to go with one. Why the one that they chose? Why is that the case? Well, in many cases, the art of supporting the business can be a big differentiator, enhancing the culture. Nonprofits have superpowers, sometimes unutilized superpowers, to revolutionize associate engagement for companies. And when they do that with excellence, they are indispensable to companies. Evangelizing their story. Any company is always trying to break out in this cluttered media environment. If you can help them, give them a new platform, a new audience, opportunities to tell their brand story, the appreciation is through the roof. And then these other kind of pillar categories that I just call them mastering the relationship. This is a lot of small stuff that adds up to huge sort of magic making in relationships. It is no different than when you're trying to court someone in a dating relationship. You get creative, you go the extra mile, you do the next thing to stand out. And when that happens, it is absolutely noticed on the corporate side. And then deepening and thickening ties. Once that relationship is set, what are the things that you can do as a nonprofit to deepen that involvement, to have multiple cords coming from organization to nonprofit to make sure that, in a time of economic uncertainty or when a company may be struggling financially and they've got to make the tough decisions, how have you created such a strong cord that it would be very difficult to make a decision to cut that cord? And so you're going to hear a lot of this stuff as we dive into our discussion that I'm really excited about. Just wanted to kind of frame this a little bit. But these five things are actually 5,000 things. And you can master maybe not all of them, but the great nonprofit leaders that have the great partnerships will be the ones that master most of these. So Heather Geronemos is a friend of mine. I feel very, very fortunate to call Heather a friend. We've kind of gone along our journeys together. Heather is the Senior Director of Social Equity and Impact for UKG. UKG is based here in South Florida and is not only kind of the leader in their space, which is, software platform technology. Probably didn't say that perfectly, but you probably know UKG as well as anyone out there, especially if you're in Florida. But also they have been, and their subsidiary companies before they merged into UKG 5 years ago, came from just philanthropy first cultures. And you see that is part of who they are and how they go to market and what kind of employer they are. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because of leadership. And Heather has been that leader that has been building that culture of social impact and making that a priority from within and doing that in a time of mergers and acquisitions. I mean, just fabulous work. I've had a front row seat to it. And I feel super privileged to have that. Many of you have too. before we bring Heather on, I just wanted to show, I spent just a few minutes online thinking, gosh, we go back, we've had so many adventures, whether it be, her leadership with um, Walk Like Mad, Mad Dash. You'll hear more about that. She does so much in her private philanthropic life, to sitting on councils with her in our various roles in corporate philanthropy, whether I was at ADT or Office Depot or other places. We go way, way back. I look at these pictures, and my kids are so much older now, which tells me and Heather go back 10, 15 years to when I think we met at in Emerge Broward when we were young professionals. And that feels like a million years ago when we say the word young professional. But it's been fun to watch her sort of become the world-class leader that she is. Before we bring her on, there's a video that I want us all to watch, because this she receives a lot of honors. And I can say that as her friend, this one was really special that she received last year, the Jason Taylor Community Hall of Fame Award winner. Really a prestigious thing. So if you will just hold tight with me 1 minute, I want to pull this up. It's really worth it's gonna be really worth us kind of getting a flavor. And I think that it's gonna brag on Heather in a way that I know that she won't do it. So hold on 1 moment as we and while we're doing that, I just want to encourage everyone to be thinking of questions, add questions as you can. And here we go. We're going to be bringing up a very inspiring video. I'm going to make sure we have the audio going for it, though. If we have audio problems, please let me know.
No audio.
There's no audio. You can't hear it.
Well, I appreciate the feedback. Hold tight 1 second, because that is critical here. Well, you know what? I'm because we have Heather and this video is amazing. I will send this out with a recap of our session here today. So instead, what I'd like to do real quick is to bring on my friend Heather Geronemos, who again, we go way back. Heather, I tell you what, if Amy on our team, could you highlight both of us or spotlight both of us so that our audiences kind of see us primarily? I think that'll be the best kind of viewing. I think we're there. Are we there? Let us know if we can kind of do a split screen. Oh, there we are. Heather, it is amazing to be able to do this with you. I feel like we have gone a long and winding road in our careers, going back to 2010 or 11 when we met, and to see, in one hand, I'm a fan, and then I get to also be a friend, which is kind of an amazing thing. First of all, how are you doing? How is 2025 going for you, UKG, in your department?
Well, first of all, I was reflecting on when we met, and I do think it was Emerge Broward. I came up with the same idea. And when I crystallized what I wanted to do in this world, you were one of the first people I talked to. So because you were in the role that I'm in now. Now you're kind of on a different side, a different part of it. But I remember we had a lunch in Boca to talk about how you did what you did at the company you were at that time. So appreciate that and appreciate the opportunity always to kind of keep paying that mentoring and education and sharing forward. So thank you for having me. 2025 is interesting. I mean, I think that's like
Say the least.
the only word we can put on 2025. But UKG is growing. You alluded to our merger of Ultimate Software, for those of you who are here in South Florida, and Kronos. A big deal for me in that was that we became essentially a 12,000 person company overnight in 2020 during the pandemic and all the things that brought. And my footprint and my role has now gone from South Florida philanthropy to South Florida, Middlesex County in Massachusetts, and the world. So, I'm not just thinking about how we're impacting this community, but I'm thinking about how UKG can create an impact in our headquarter locations and where we have a big employee presence, but also how can we engage our employees wherever they are. We're about 16,000 employees around the world. So we have to also provide opportunities, not just in the office, but for those employees that sit in Tulsa with no other, UCRers around them. So that's kind of, one of the big challenges of my role, but one of the great challenges of my role.
I think about then, with your growth, especially your geographic growth,
Mhm.
now there's going to be new communities to serve, new partners that are going to be pretty excited to know that you're active in their communities. And it's only going to be more and more, I would think, from a volume of asks and nonprofits really wanting to get to know you, wanting to see if there's alignment, which of course is good, which is a wonderful thing, but of course it comes with its challenges and difficulties to navigate that. So I feel like we probably have been in corporate philanthropy through a couple of different eras, right? Coming out of the Great Recession, we're like starting, we go through COVID and we go through post-COVID and all the trauma and tribulation of 2020, and now we are in 2025 with new unforeseen kind of headwinds in many different ways.
Sure.
And with all that, there's certain fundamental things about a nonprofit um, courting a relationship with a company. And it's difficult, I know. And for those outside of this vocation, you know, you would we would love to do it all on behalf of our organizations, of course. But we all, even the most generous of companies, have finite dollars, you have finite time, you have finite staff, so you have finite bandwidth to manage only a certain number of relationships at a quality you would want, which means you got to make tough decisions. And they're
Yep.
tougher than most people think. So I want to spend a time for us kind of digging deep because we have a lot of nonprofit leaders out here. They represent great organizations and they want to be heard. They want to have the best chance of of having fruitful partnerships. You know, from your perspective, looking back over your 10, 12, 15 years in your role, what generally speaking are the traits and attributes that have stood out that have led to partnering and great partnering? Knowing that most organizations that approach you are doing fabulous work and you'd love to do
Sure.
it all, but you might have to make decisions. What are some of those traits and things you're like, I'm looking for that because that
Mhm.
tends to translate into fruitful partnership.
Let me take a step back from the traits just to kind of set the stage
Please.
and folks on the other side understand like this is a relationship business, right? It's not it's almost sales. Like you're selling your amazing nonprofit. I don't think that there are that many nonprofits that are out there that aren't doing great work. But it's a relationship business, but it's still a business. I have to sit at the table with all the other senior leaders at UKG or whatever company I'm at, and show what my department brings to the table. Because, like Alex said, when you're facing tough economic times, you don't want to be the first on the chopping block. You don't want to be anywhere near the chopping block. And you want people to say, corporate philanthropy or social impact or whatever it's called at that company that you're pitching brings this to the table. So we have a strategy. You know, every year my team sits down and develops a strategy for the year that we stick to. It has, you know, what are we going to do? What are the areas we're going to focus on? And how are we going to support the CEO's strategy? That's where we start. My CEO's strategy is where we start on our strategy, because if we're not aligned to the business, if we're not focused on at UKG, you know, our strategic pillars are to be all in for our customers, for growth, and as one team. So if my team is not working on those three things, then my team is not doing the right thing. Now you can see how we would align easily, particularly to as one team, but we align easily to all of those things. But it's important to be able to articulate that, not just for me, but for the newest member of my team who I hired out of her internship because she got it, right? But she needs to be able to articulate how what she's doing every day, a lot of which you see on social media, kind of communicating the partnerships that we have and the employee engagement that we do. One of her primary responsibilities is to share that with the world and to be a partner to our social media team. Now she has to understand like what we're doing so that she can communicate that with the social media team. So you have to understand that we're in business. You know, it's whatever the business is. I would love to be in the business of just giving away money, but you know, the business has to support the business goals. But it's the thing that I think has been the most distinct change, and it's been slow then fast, is that social impact professionals are okay with owning the fact that we have a huge impact on brand. We have a huge impact on employee engagement, and we have a huge impact on talent extraction and retention. So, but if we have to say that, we then have to prove it, right? So if you're not a partner of mine that's on the call right now, you know that you now submit an application. The application used to be my inbox, which is really hard to manage. So we can collect the same information on every partner and look at everyone on an apples to apples basis, but also so we can report and we can say, did you do what you say you were going to do? We need to be able to do that. So I think that, you know, the traits, to get back to the beginning of your question, is, you know, a passion for what you do, but an understanding of what the company's goals are. So the desire to learn. You wouldn't believe how many emails I have in my inbox that say, we're a perfect fit for UKG. I would like to know how you know that if you haven't had a conversation with us. And what someone like me reads that as is, you have money, we need money, you should give us money. Like that's very transactional. And I get lots of other, you know, sales pitchy emails like that too. And I think those are the ones that kind of, you know, get deleted or filed in the I don't have time to respond to that file. But the traits are really listening, understanding, passion for what you do, and really a desire to partner, not to just get a check.
What that and there's such a big difference, right? Because partnering is truly two-way. Partnering means flexibility, malleability, doing things that are going to be mutually beneficial. And I know that can be sometimes a little it's time consuming for the nonprofit.
Yeah.
And a nonprofit has to weigh whether or not that relationship um, might be worth the effort, because we get it. It's a zero-sum game. A lot of nonprofits are, you know, they're not as staffed as robustly as they would like, and you know, time is of the essence. But you're right. In that environment, it feels tremendous when a nonprofit that you're working with or that wants to work with you, when you can tell they've really taken the time to understand your business, because well, we're obsessed with our businesses, right? We're in it all day long. And we're living and breathing our products, our customers, our markets, the trends. When a nonprofit, and again, not to have to be an expert, but it is quite gratifying when a nonprofit leader, when you can tell, feels generally interested and has taken the time to be knowledgeable.
Yep.
And when they do that and when it feels authentic, I've just noticed that really stands out to me. I don't know if you've experienced that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it takes time. And even if you
Yeah.
don't have a tremendous team or you don't have tremendous capacity, you still have to build a relationship to get a lasting partner. You may get one check. You may get someone that, you know, a CEO says, put something on a desk and said, this, you know, has to be funded. But that's a one-time deal. So it's worth the investment. It's absolutely worth the investment. And then you get to the point, I have an email in my inbox right now that it's like undeniable that I'm going to say yes to something, even though I might have to like do some tricks to make it happen, because it's something that is so aligned with our strategy. It's something that the team would be passionate about, and it's a little bit more money than I thought we were going to spend in that place this year, but it's worth it because of the time and the investment and the intention behind the, what was proposed to me. So
Yeah.
it really, when you find yourself on that side of it as a funder, it's really special.
You were, I wanted to go back to something you said earlier, which was sort of about how we as CSR professionals within companies whose primary existence is to sell something else, right?
Yeah.
That's the primary. And yet, and that they've prioritized what we do and the assets that we are investing. At the same time, companies have good weeks, good quarters, bad quarters, good years, bad years, or relatively speaking. And there is, I can say, I'm probably a little more free to say things because right now I'm not representing a big logo, and in that there are times when you have to defend the work, right? You have to defend the function, you have to defend the work, the budget and the partnerships, and it's really when a partner takes the time to be a partner with you on that
Yeah.
is a really great thing. Hey, we know that Heather Geronemos is charged with many things, but one of those is to leverage the social impact investment of UKG to fire up the employee base, to increase pride, which of course is going to help with retention and promotion of great talent, and that's great for the business. How can we do extra things beyond the job description as a nonprofit to really help Heather in that effort?
Yep.
And I know that I've experienced that. And when you don't ask and they come alongside and say, how can we really do something this year to really engage in a very special way your local associate base? Let us help you with that. I don't know if you've experienced, I have several times, and boy, is that like, oh, here to make knowing what I'm measured against, you want to come
Sure.
and help me in that. And
Yeah.
it's tremendous.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, listen, there's countless partners that I can think of that I've said, even, have said we may have to pull back from that partner, but we've had an honest conversation, and the why becomes, we don't hear from you. We're not engaged. And we had someone just last year that, we were funding something that, fundamentally, again, great program, great initiative, but we never heard from them. We never saw them. Our employees couldn't put their hands and hearts around the impact. And I gave that feedback to the CEO, and she brought the impact to us. And we had a great we had a great associate engagement with another nonprofit that was a partner of theirs. And then that became part of something that people look forward to each year. So if you can go deeper, if you can listen, if you can adapt, it's great. I don't think it should be to the detriment of the nonprofit. As a national nonprofit board leader, I've been in that seat too, where I've looked at partnership agreements at a big scale and said, this partnership is too cumbersome for this amount of money. Now there's always you
Yes.
shouldn't, because there are, and now we may not, no, this might be an order of magnitude thing, but there are partnerships that get logo placement and do this and do that, that then become so much for the nonprofit, it's not worth it. So you should only commit to doing what you can do. And if you're a small team, and if, there's still ways, like we have, you've got here in South Florida, you've got Humane Society and Abandoned Pet Rescue. These are both fantastic organizations that are doing great things. But they couldn't be more different in terms of capacity. And but the Abandoned Pet Rescue folks are honest with us. Yes, we can take your pet beds. No, we can't do the thing that the Humane Society does where we bring the animals to the office because we don't have the capacity to do that. But please come volunteer, so we can, and again, both great organizations, but they have different ability. But if you're honest with the funder, when you ask these questions, all they can do is say, this is not a great fit for us, or this is a great fit for us. So it's just about having those conversations, but you have to ask the questions as the nonprofit.
No, and I want to come back to, most CSR leaders do sit on boards, but to say you sat on boards would be just a tremendous understatement. You lead national boards, and you drive them to places that they weren't when you assume the role. So there's what a lot of us do, and there's what you do. And that's amazing in itself, but it gives you a unique perspective of the other side of the table. And I do want to come to that. Amy, on our team said there's a couple of pertinent questions, and so Amy, I don't know if you want to maybe just kind of direct them to Heather or I. I think you said one or two we should maybe address right now.
Absolutely. So the first question is from Nick Agosto. It is outside of the outdated moves management model, if you and Heather could put a step-by-step process on how to approach a potential corporate partner, what would that look like?
Hmm. I love that. I mean, so there are certain fundamental things that I think are timeless for sure. Heather, so why don't we can kind of tag team this kind of thing? I mean, I I want to say that
Eliminating?
there is no one process that's going to work for any
What?
nonprofit at any time because there's so many variables. I think some folks need to go on mute if I'm not
Please.
if you're not on mute, we're hearing
Yeah.
some office
I
chatter.
already have it pulled up.
Could be
I'm not
proprietary
doing that right
information,
now.
What?
so we don't
What's
want
up?
to, get you in any trouble. There we go. Once I said proprietary information, they're like on mute. Uh, so So there is no one size fits all. What I think you have are options within a toolbox that you can use given the situation, that you in the scenario. One thing that I think should be considered that has just always meant a lot to me is how when a nonprofit is really, you can tell, playing the long game and evaluating, or at least really, it looks like they're evaluating whether this is a great partnership as well. And they are very generous to invite you out to events at no cost to experience their mission, come to the gala luncheon or breakfast for free, come and sit with us, learn what we're about, see if this is something you'd want to take to the next step. I want to kind of start with that as opposed to going for the jugular right away. When you do that, and look, sometimes I get it, you got to do that because you're under pressure as well. But it sure feels nice when you can tell that organizations are if they're in a position to be more thoughtful, a little bit more patient, a little bit more, hey, come meet us, come and really absorb. I don't know, Heather, what comes to mind with the kind of initial relationship building, not maintenance, but
Sure. So I agree with you. There's no one size fits all model. And I think that you have to be creative because like where I started, this is a relationship business. It's not, you have to work a relationship. If you have contacts that people, you have common contacts with someone that you want to get in touch with. That's always, a nice soft intro is always great. Certainly not connecting with someone on LinkedIn and then trying to sell them your nonprofit in the next connection. That's not going to work. But I love, Alex, your strategy of inviting them to an event or something really mission focused. So, I'm just looking out the window at the YMCA here on Sis Trunk, and they have an amazing MLK Day celebration. If I was the YMCA and I was trying to woo a new nonprofit or corporate partner, I would invite them to that volunteer day because it's amazing. The entire community convenes on the LA Lead Mizell for a parade and volunteering. And it's a community that doesn't have a lot, but that community is paying it forward on that day in memory of Dr. Martin Luther King. So I would think about what's special about your nonprofit and how you can connect the person that you're trying to woo to what's special about your nonprofit. So if it's a gala, it's a gala, but if it's something hands-on, like visiting a lab that's doing research that you funded, that's incredible, right? So if you can get people to see what you see and see the impact, that's what I would recommend.
yeah. And just to kind of piggyback off of that, I know that just thinking back of different scenarios that I've been in when a nonprofit has said, hey, we let's do something more mission focused. How about a volunteer event that'll be particularly kind of educational on what we do, and let's get out a group. Maybe, hey, does there a particular department that needs to have sort of a, an offsite bonding experience? Would your legal department like to get out for a half day? Because we could really do something that would kind of be energizing for them. Or do you have an ERG or ARG on a special recognition day where we can help them celebrate that in a hands-on experiential way? And then you crush it, right?
Absolutely.
And then if you can do it, you kind of do what's great times two. And look, this has happened to me countless times where you go and it's really an introductory experience, and you can tell that it they're treating it like, it's an audition and they are going to ace it. And you get that experience that is both extremely educational on the cause, that is very beneficial for the cause, but they've done the extra things to make it an incredible employee engagement experience. And
Yeah.
again, when I say that, I know that can sound self-serving, and not all nonprofits are staffed and have the ability to do that. But if you can, especially in a first impression type scenario, to really help them, take their associate engagement to the next level, um, and that's a pretty small ask, right? We're not looking for a day of service for your entire company base, but is there a department? Is there a standalone team? Is there an ARG? Do you have a new leader that needs to bond with their team? And then this is putting them in a great light, you
Yeah.
know? That's another way to do it. Um, and by the way, why don't we talk offline, because that's a whole that's a whole huge exciting conversation. But Amy, I want to get to the other question you had referenced.
Absolutely. So you actually answered question two in your discussion. So that's awesome. Good job, guys. So the next question is also from Nick. When attempting to navigate a corporation's public data, some people are hard to find or non-existent on their websites or LinkedIn pages. Can you provide a list of titles for corporate employees that are in charge of philanthropy for their organization?
That's a tough one, especially with the changing landscape of titles. Like, for example, my title is Social Equity, Opportunity, and Impact. I think it's kind of long anyway, but we're going to tighten that up to Social Impact. So, social impact's a good place to start. Corporate philanthropy is a good place to start. But a lot of these folks sit under comms teams. A lot of them sit under marketing teams. A lot of them, myself, I've been in on the PR team, on the Belong Equity and Impact team, on the HR team, and this is all one company. So that's not as simple as you might think. But if you're in South Florida or really anywhere with a book of lists, which is most major cities, if you look at the South Florida Business Journal, every year they publish the book of lists, and one of the lists is the corporations that give away the most money, tiered by how much money they give away, and there's a person that's attached to that. So I would take a look at that, and that will give you a better hint as to what the titles look like this year, because a lot of titles are changing and evolving.
Yeah, I've been a part of marketing, HR, throw in a legal in there. Actually, when I was at Comcast, we were part of the legal department because it was called government affairs, but yet
Yeah,
we had the philanthropic budget. So there
yeah,
is that as well. Um, there are some corporations where it's kind of their public affairs, not
yeah.
necessarily their lobbyists, but their kind of government affairs person also has the philanthropic budget. So kind of look out for that as well. So it does depend, and boy, especially with um, you know, all the political changes and whatnot, we've seen big renaming efforts along the way, and that's just been the reality of the last 6 months. So it makes it a little harder on your end, but by the way, we're all dealing with this in real time, so it's not just you. um, and I would say typically these folks are public facing. I mean, from a LinkedIn perspective, again, you don't want to LinkedIn bomb everyone. um, for, what I say, you don't want the first interaction to be the ask.
Correct.
Heather, I always laugh about this when you get like a LinkedIn request from someone. You're like, awesome, cool organization. Of course, I say yes. And then the moment you say yes, you get the ask icon in the inbox, and you're like, wow. My line is, wow, that escalated really quick.
Yeah. Yep.
We're already, wow. We're going out for coffee, and here we go. But, and again, and that's not to, we've all actually probably done that. And I know that on behalf of boards fundraising, I've done a bit of that. We're all guilty of it. What we're talking about is next level, really taking it up a notch. And so I want to kind of get back to that. And talk to us about, so you've been in your role I see you've been in your role. It's been like 10 roles through that time in different
Yeah.
iterations. But can you talk to us about one or two of the kind of magical partnerships that had longevity, that were more than a beneficiary, that became legendary or important to your leaders and your associates, and
Mhm.
why that was when many
Sure.
others aren't? Why?
Sure. So I didn't know you were going to attempt to share that video, and thank you for not making me watch it because it makes me cry every time, but I love it. It's
I'm
amusing.
sending it out, but go.
But when I was thinking about great partners, I was thinking about the Jason Taylor Foundation. And the reason was because going back to what we were talking about this being a relationship business, Jason and my former CEO, who also hired me, who I love, were friends. And that was the genesis of, us supporting the Jason Taylor Foundation as Ultimate Software. And in 2019, Scott Shear retired, and then Ultimate merged with Kronos, and we became UKG. And while I was still there, the leaders had changed, and potentially how we fund communities had changed. But Seth Levitt, who's the executive director there, and they talk about small teams. He's the team of one in his role, executive director and fundraising, and then they have programs folks. But Seth doesn't have a big team. But Seth took the initiative to reach out to me and talk to me about get to know me, get to know the challenges of my role. We talked a lot about the challenges in 2020 of fundraising because they have an event-driven fundraising model. So we were both going through, because I was also, as you kind of alluded to, I was having to shut down my own public-facing nonprofit events that brought people together. So we were going through a lot of the same things, and he became, in his outreach, he wasn't asking me for money. He became a thought partner on how we could navigate these times. And through that, we developed a relationship. And through that, there was an ask. We had been a significant partner for them as Ultimate Software. But he didn't say, Scott did this and Ultimate did this. He said, like, how can we partner in your new environment? What can we do together? And I thought that was just so interesting because he could have done it in a number of ways, but he came at it in a really perfect way for the time, perfect way for relationship building. And we've always had now this kind of open relationship where I will say, hey, like we talked about, we have 2 headquarters. We used to do a thing here in South Florida where we would raffle off a vehicle that funded the Jason Taylor Foundation. So I called him and I said, can we get that car delivered to Massachusetts? And he didn't tell me to kick rocks. He said, I think we can do that. And he figured it out. And so that's been our relationship, where I will come up with something insane and he'll say, I think we can do that. And if we can't do it, he'll say that too. And I'll say, okay, thanks for checking. Right. So that car raffle has raised $500,000 for the Jason Taylor Foundation in 5 years. So if he hadn't said, let me go check with the automotive dealer that donates this thing, and had gotten that yes, that's $500,000 that in like no work for that organization, some work, but not the kind of work of putting on a big event. So his kind of ability to develop a relationship with me, to bring me into the mission, to invite me to really special events like their poetry slam, Louder Than a Bomb, it drew me into the organization. It drew our associates into the organization. You mentioned ERGs. The more we can place our employee resource groups with these nonprofits at UKG, each employee resource group has a community impact pillar. So that's 10 more teams than mine of community impact that can do their own things that they pick. So there's lots and lots of opportunities when you do what Seth did and you peel back the layers of the company and figure out where you can fit in that are great. So that's one amazing example. And then another example, and this is where we're really linking back to the strategy of UKG. Broward College has a certification program that's for non-degree seekers. It was called Broward Up. They're evolving that program. But Broward Up inspired me to think about, how can we solve a business challenge that UKG has? So UKG we're implementing customers all the time. We're bringing on new customers. And at the moment that this idea came to me, we didn't have enough folks implementing our software. And I thought, well, we train our employees to do that. Can we train Broward College students to do that? And it wasn't quite as simple. It wasn't quite as simple as putting it in a Broward Up program. We needed degree seekers. We needed a little bit more. But Broward College brought all the right people to the table. So the foundation folks, the IT pathway, the business pathway, the HR pathway, and we sat at a table, and it took 18 months. But we started a program to, this will be the third semester this year. We started a program called our HCM certification program, which is structured as an internship. They get credits for it that are funded by philanthropy. They get paid. They walk away with a certification you can't get anywhere else that makes you uniquely qualified to become a UKG employee. We've hired the vast majority of the students that have graduated from that program, creating a new pathway for talent at UKG with a philanthropic program. But that wouldn't have happened if Broward College didn't say, like, let's get everyone at the table and let's figure this out. Because it was a long process. It wasn't straightforward, but they were open to it. And now we will have our third cohort of students here in South Florida, and we're expanding the program to a community college in Massachusetts in August. So when you have a partner that's willing to sit at the table, and it's okay to say no, if it doesn't work out, but when you have a partner that's willing to sit at the table and say, how can we figure this out? Really great things can happen.
Yeah, and I like that you've emphasized that a number of times that it is okay to say no. It's gotta make good business sense for the nonprofit. But we want you to be open to exploring these opportunities, and then sometimes it's gonna be more work, and they would pull you away from your core mission. You gotta say, hey, not
Yep.
at this time, right? And that is totally fine. I want to get because we're almost 10 minutes away from noon. And I just want to say a couple of things that came to mind as you were talking about that, helping out with the business problem. And these are just some cool things that I experienced as COVID was winding down, and I was at Office Depot, and our associates and leaders were really wanting to know about the purchasing decisions and had they changed post-COVID with teachers? What are the classroom needs? What are their pain points? They're likely to have completely changed. And what can we do? And I remember one of the big education foundations in South Florida that we partnered with came to us and said, hey, what about us curating a big teacher focus group day where we select active teachers from different grades and different experiences come to you, and they'll love it. We'll create a great experience for them, and they'll come to your headquarters, and really we'll feed them, and they will ask them to talk about their pain points and what's changed post-COVID. And I remember that nonprofit did all that work. And by the way, that's something that a company would usually spend thousands of dollars to a vendor to do. And we had a partner that brought that to us for free. We got all the insights we could have ever needed. And boy, that made that partnership, which was already strong, indispensable because they were now
Sure.
a business partner bringing actual business value to us in addition to the philanthropic aspects of what we did.
Love
And
that.
there's so many experiences like that. And but especially when the idea comes from the nonprofit proactively, it can really be it blows you away in such a good way. Amy, I think we've gotten a lot of questions and we can't get to them all. We will get to them all in our recap, but let's see if we can get to a few of them now. Amy, up to you. You pick a couple.
Sure, absolutely. So the ones that we don't get to, we will answer them and get back with you. I will send you a video message. So I just wanted to let everyone know that. But the next question is, what is the UKG's strategy for social impact in order to align with the company's overall corporate business goals?
Great question. It's going to take that longer than the moments that we have. But I think I gave you the kind of answer to the quiz at the beginning. We are aligned to our CEO strategy. So we follow our CEO strategy, which is focused on customers, growth, and our team. And then from there, we have a pillar investment strategy. We focus on, and this is all available on our website, by the way. We focus on the areas of health, human services, and education. And then, of course, being a partially South Florida-based company, we do some disaster philanthropy. And then we have these strategic initiatives, like I talked about at Broward College, which falls under the education pillar. But again, you can find almost every piece of my strategy on ukg.com/social impact. Because we're very transparent about how we invest in communities. And we also have a very strong focus. You talked about it, Alex, about employee engagement. We send teams out. We bring team activities on site. We have our 10 employee resource groups with their 10 community impact pillars. And so there's a very strong focus on how we can engage our employees, because we can only do so much. The dollars can only go so far, but we give our employees paid days off to serve the community. So that's about 250,000 hours of time we're paying our employees to spend in the community. And the thing that's magical about that is that then they go back. I actually, one of the students in the HCM certification program that we just hired had emailed me before we hired him and said, I was so inspired by UKG's commitment to philanthropy that I started volunteering myself in my free time in one of the nonprofits that you introduced me to during the certification. And that was just like the best email I could ever get, right? Because we can do a lot with the capital that we have, but what our employees can go do and what they can inspire their families to do and inspire their children to do, is really what keeps me in the corporate philanthropy space. That kind of orders of magnitude that we have to invest in the community, not just dollars, but time and talent that we have.
I like that because, the money is, look, it's the lifeblood. It's critically important. But I mean, a great aligned partnership is when other areas of value of the company are actually useful to the nonprofit as well,
Yep.
right? Whether it's
Absolutely.
product, services, people, expertise, your facility, whatever, when there are other assets that can be part of that, stronger partnership, it clearly there's more alignment because there's just more crossover, there's more value crossover. So I think it doesn't always work that way, but when it does, I think it's stronger partnership. Let's see if we can get to a couple more, Amy.
The next question is from Deanna for kids. We understand that your time is limited. What is your decision process in selecting which events or activities to attend?
Heather, why don't you start, and then I'll piggyback.
So we can't possibly attend all the things that we get. I mean, we have, so we've got partners that we've been invested in for a long time, and we try to show up for them. If there are new partners that we try to, if we're making a new investment, we'll try to show up for them. But we also send, we're gonna roll out a champions program, a community champions program. We don't have one today, but I'm really excited about being able to send more employees out into the community on behalf of the company, because it can't possibly always be me. But as far as the evaluation process before the kind of showing up part even happens, as I mentioned, we now look at all of our nonprofit partners using the same application form. So everyone is getting asked the same questions. Everyone is being measured on the same kind of impact expectations, so that we can say this at the end of the year. I can go to my CEO and say, here's the number of people that we helped this year with this number of dollars, and here's the number of volunteer hours that we spent at these nonprofits. That part we track on our own, it's not on the nonprofits, but we need to be able, just like any other area of important in business, you need to be able to track, you need to be able to show what the outcomes are. And really then, I do a lot of telling of the impact stories, because the stories aren't in the numbers, but the numbers also have to be there and they have to be compelling. So our process is a little bit more standard than it would have been in the past if you were approaching us a decade ago. But as we grow, and as we have more potential partners, we have to standardize on our side. And it does make it pretty straightforward for the nonprofits. It's not cumbersome, and it's not outside of the realm of working with any large company.
Yeah, and I would say, especially as you have a robust, sophisticated philanthropic operation, there is, especially in South Florida, we are an event kind of market. You're typically not going to be prioritizing the event of the organization that you're not already involved in on some level, right? Like, that's going to be kind of, you're going to prioritize those. I'm looking even on screen here. I see Christine Sylvain. When I was at Office Depot, we must have had 10 to 15 associates that were long-term mentors of her mentees. You're going to go to her events because that tie is extremely strong between company and nonprofit. I see over here Deanna with 4 kids. Again, during my Office Depot stint, they had created a program where we would come in, our basically our interior design team would do makeovers of foster care homes. Again, utilizing not the money, but the expertise and in-kind product donations. And so that was a creative thing that they sort of orchestrated for us. You're going to go to those events because you have something else really substantial happening. So that was always my rubric. It'd be rare, not that you would never, but it'd be rare to go to a lot of events where you don't have other substantive activities happening. We're coming towards the end, and I knew this was going to happen, Heather. We're going to get to like one fraction of what we wanted to talk to, but what I'd love to do is, there's going to be a whole host of questions that we didn't get to. Why don't, offline, you and I will try to tag team getting some substantive responses out. I'm going to real quick here. I want to bring up my slide deck because we do have something very exciting coming up here in only 2 weeks, actually. And I'm really, really excited that our next Impact Lab is going to be tackling a big issue that a lot of folks are thinking about, talking about behind closed doors, and not talking about it a whole lot um, outside of those closed doors for a whole host of reasons. And we get it, but we do know that a lot of folks have a lot of desire not to walk this path alone. So it's navigating DEI. It's a candid discussion in an era of change. My dear friend and former colleague, Kevin Birch, who's the founder of Be Civilized Solutions, and he's speaking nationally around the nation on this topic in really practical ways, by the way, nonpartisan, just super practical. How can you prioritize your mission, play the long game, and really stay true to your values and really safeguard your organization as well. So that's what we're going to be digging into with Kevin. I want to say thank you to Heather. I just so grateful for you. I can't wait to see what you guys do in this next season through UKG, and we'd love to have you on again next year to hear about it. So just thank you for your time and all that you do for, well, I would say was South Florida, then Florida, and now kind of the world. So we really appreciate it. And we love you and we love all of you. Please reach out to us again. Mission Impact Strategies, we're here to help. We'd love to have a 30-minute talk with anyone who's kind of going through specific challenge or has a specific growth ambition here in 2025 and 2026. So reach out to us, and we hope to see you all in 2 weeks for Navigating DEI. Until then, have a phenomenal day and week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.